Hello, Night Seekers, and welcome to Lacuna Noir. This is where forgotten stories and gentle voices meet, carrying you softly into peaceful sleep, wrapped in mystery. Before tonight's stories begin, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let me know. And a little note before we begin. You may notice a few brief ads in the first 10 minutes, but after that, the rest of the video is completely ad-free. Just you, the silence, and the stories. So settle in, get comfortable, and let the night carry you. If you're drawn to these quiet, shadowed nights, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a story when darkness calls. The last thing I remember from being alive was the light. Not ordinary headlights, not the soft white glow of a car coming from the other direction. This was brighter than that. It filled the whole road and washed everything else away. I had been driving for hours. My eyes burned. My neck hurt. The road had become a long black line stretching through the night, with nothing on either side except trees and darkness. I kept telling myself I was almost home, just a little farther. One more exit, one more song on the radio. I should have pulled over. I knew I was tired. I knew my eyes were closing for longer each time I blinked. I opened the window, turned up the music, and slapped my face. I drank the last warm mouthful of coffee from the cup beside me. None of it worked. At some point, my head dropped. I do not know how long my eyes were closed. It might have been 1 second. It might have been 5. When I opened them, I was no longer in my lane. The horn of a semi-truck shook the entire world. Its high beams came rushing toward me, growing larger and brighter until I could see nothing else. I remember gripping the wheel. I remember trying to turn. I remember screaming. Then came the impact. Metal folded around me. Glass exploded. Something struck my chest with enough force to crush every breath from my body. Then there was blackness. I thought that was the end. For a while, it was. There was no pain, no sound, no feeling. There was not even a sense of time passing. Then, without warning, I was standing inside a hospital. I did not wake up in a bed. I did not open my eyes beneath bright lights or hear the beeping of machines. One moment, there was nothing. The next, I was simply there. I stood near the corner of a hospital room. My mother was inside. She was crying harder than I had ever seen anyone cry. Her whole body shook as she leaned over the bed. Her hands clutched the blanket, and her face was pressed against someone lying beneath it. My father stood behind her with one arm around her shoulders. My brother stood near the wall. He looked pale. Tears ran down his face, but he made no sound. He stared at the bed as though he did not understand what he was seeing. For a few seconds, I did not understand either. I looked around the room, confused. Then I moved closer. The person in the bed was me. My body was almost impossible to recognize. Bandages covered my head, chest, and arms. One side of my face was swollen and dark with bruises. There were cuts across my skin, dried blood near my hair, and tubes running beneath the blankets. A machine beside the bed was silent. No lights flashed. No lines moved across the screen. I stared at my own body and felt nothing at first. Not fear, not sadness, only confusion. I reached for my mother's shoulder. My hand passed through her. She did not feel it. She continued crying against my chest. No, she said over and over. No, 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 I tried to speak. Mom? No one reacted. I shouted her name. My father did not turn. My brother did not look up. That was when I began to understand. I was dead. The knowledge did not arrive all at once. It settled into me slowly. piece by piece. The truck, the impact, the blackness, my body in the hospital bed, my mother's screams. I had died on that road. I had fallen asleep, crossed into the other lane, and thrown away my life because I had been too tired and too stubborn to stop driving. I wanted to tell them I was sorry. I wanted to explain that I had not meant for it to happen. I wanted my mother to look at me. For hours, I watched my family grieve beside my body. My mother hardly moved. When my father tried to lift her, she fought him and grabbed the blanket. My brother finally came closer. He stood beside the bed and looked down at what remained of me. "You idiot," he whispered. His voice broke. "You stupid idiot." Then he lowered his head and cried. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to tell him I deserved that. Doctors came into the room later. They spoke quietly to my father. I could not hear every word, but I understood enough. My body had to be taken away. My family needed to say goodbye. My mother began screaming again. The sound tore through the room. My father kissed my forehead. My brother touched my hand. Then my mother leaned over me one final time. "My baby," she whispered. "My baby." I stood beside her, shouting that I was still there. She could not hear me. The hospital staff moved my body away. My family slowly walked toward the exit. I followed them. I did not know what else to do. When they passed through the hospital doors, the hallway disappeared. I stepped through after them and entered a church. My funeral had already begun. There was no journey between the hospital and the church. No waiting, no days passing. One room became another. My casket stood at the front beneath soft lights. Flowers surrounded it. People filled the rows. Friends, relatives, former classmates, neighbors, some people I had not seen in years. They spoke in quiet voices and wiped their eyes. A few stared toward the casket as if they expected me to sit up. Photographs of me had been placed near the entrance. There I was as a child, sitting on my father's shoulders. There I was with my brother on a beach. There I was standing beside my mother on the day I graduated. I looked alive in every picture. The sight of those old smiles hurt more than seeing my broken body in the hospital. My mother entered with my father beside her. Her hands shook. Her knees nearly gave way before she reached the front row. My father held her upright and guided her to the pew. My brother followed behind them. He looked different already, smaller somehow, as though part of him had disappeared with me. A preacher spoke about love, loss, and acceptance. He said death was not the end. He said I had gone to a better place. I wanted to believe him. But I was still standing in the church, still trapped among the living, still unable to touch anyone. My mother's cries continued beneath the sermon. She tried to stay quiet, but the sounds escaped anyway. I stood beside her and held my hand over hers. She felt nothing. The church disappeared when the service ended. I found myself at the cemetery. The sky was black, not dark gray, not cloudy, black like ink. The wind moved through the trees, bending the branches above the graves. My casket rested beside an open hole. Everyone gathered around it. The preacher spoke again, but his words were difficult to hear because thunder rolled across the sky. Rain began falling. At first, there was only a few drops. Then the storm opened completely. Millions of cold drops struck the ground, the casket, and the people standing around it. Lightning flashed. The guests began leaving one by one. Some hugged my parents. Others placed flowers near the grave before running toward their cars. Soon, only my mother, father, and brother remained. My father begged my mother to leave. "We have to go," he said. "Please," she shook her head. "I'm not leaving him." Lightning struck the ground less than 50 feet away. The sound shook the cemetery. My father grabbed my mother beneath the arms and forced her upright. She kicked and screamed while he dragged her toward the car. My brother followed, looking back at the grave until the rain hid him from view. Then, they were gone. The grave diggers began working. One of them lifted a shovel full of wet soil and threw it into the hole. The mud struck the casket. At the same moment, something hit me. I fell backward. The grave opened beneath me, and I landed on top of my own coffin. Another shovelful came down. Black mud struck my face. I tried to stand, but I could not move. My body had become fixed in place. More dirt fell. Each scoop blocked another piece of the sky. I tried to call out. No one heard me. The hole became darker and darker until the final light disappeared. Then, I was buried. The darkness beneath the ground was different from the blackness after the accident. That first darkness had been empty. This one felt alive. It pressed against me from every direction. The weight of the earth seemed to crush my chest, even though I no longer had a body that needed air. I tried to move my arms. Nothing happened. I tried to turn my head. I could not. I opened my mouth and screamed. No sound came out. There was no air, no breath, only the endless feeling of suffocation. I could not breathe, but I could not die again. That was the first horror of the place. Then the whispers began. At first, they were distant, soft voices moving somewhere beyond the darkness. I could not understand the words. Then they came closer. Thousands of whispers surrounded me. They crawled into my ears and filled my mind. Some laughed. Some cried. Some repeated my name. Others reminded me that no one could hear me. You are alone. You did this. She needed you. You left them. You killed yourself. You killed them too. I tried not to listen. There was nowhere else for my mind to go. Time did not exist there. There was no day, no night, no hunger, no sleep. I simply remained. I stayed in that darkness for 12 years. I know it was 12 years now, but while I was there, it could have been 12 seconds or 12,000 lifetimes. People say 12 years is a long time. In the place where I was, 12 years meant nothing. Compared with forever, 12 years was a weekend at the beach, a lesson in school, a short wait in a bathroom line. Nothing, I lay in the darkness, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to lose consciousness. The whispers never stopped. Then, during the 13th year, something changed. The voices became silent. For the first time since the burial, I heard something familiar. My mother. She was crying. Then I heard my father shouting. The sounds came from all around me. Their marriage was falling apart. I heard arguments in the kitchen. Doors slamming. Glasses breaking. My father coming home drunk and yelling about money. My mother screaming that he had changed. My brother begging them to stop. I heard every fight, every cruel word, every moment of silence after the shouting ended. I heard my brother crying alone in his room. I heard my mother praying. I heard my father opening another bottle. Their pain flooded the darkness until I could think of nothing else. Then a bright screen appeared in front of me. It floated in the blackness. The light hurt my eyes, though I did not know if I still had eyes. The screen showed my childhood home. The camera moved slowly through the rooms. The living room was empty. The dining table was covered with dust. Family photographs were missing from the walls. Then I saw my father packing a suitcase. My mother stood in the doorway. Neither spoke. He carried the bag outside and left. She did not follow. The screen changed. My mother lay alone in bed. She cried into my father's empty pillow night after night. The image changed again. My brother sat in his room. He was older now. His face was thin. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. Bottles and medication covered the desk. I tried to speak to him. I begged him to get up. The screen showed him standing on a chair. A rope hung from the ceiling fan. No, I tried to scream. He placed the rope around his neck. I fought against the darkness. I pushed with every part of myself. Nothing moved. The chair fell. My brother's body dropped. His feet swung above the floor. The screen remained on him. It did not look away. His body slowly stopped moving. How could I feel sick when I had no stomach? How could I cry with no eyes? How could my heart break when my heart had been buried and turned to dust? I wanted to scream. No sound came. The screen showed my mother finding him. Her scream was worse than anything I had heard at the hospital or funeral. She had already lost one son. Now, she had lost the other. She fell beneath his body and reached for his feet. She called both our names, mine and his, over and over. I wanted to tell her it was not her fault. I wanted to tell my brother I was sorry I had not been there. I wanted to tell them that falling asleep at the wheel had not only ended my life, it had broken theirs. Maybe my death had begun everything. Maybe my father would not have started drinking if I had lived. Maybe my parents would not have separated. Maybe my brother would not have felt alone. Those thoughts became new whispers. You killed them. You left them. You destroyed the family. The screen disappeared. Darkness returned. I thought it had ended. It had only begun. Every night at exactly 6 o'clock, the screen appears again. I do not know how I know the time. There are no clocks in the darkness. Yet I always know when it is 6. The screen opens inside the void. It shows my mother. She is older now. Her hair has become gray. The house is quieter than it used to be. Every evening, she walks into the kitchen and prepares dinner. She makes 3 plates. One for herself, one for my brother, one for me. She sets the table carefully. She places forks beside each plate. She pours 3 glasses of water. Sometimes she cooks food we loved when we were children. My brother's favorite pasta, the potatoes I always asked for. She places everything in front of the empty chairs. Then she sits alone. Tears fill her eyes every time. Some nights she talks to us. She tells us about her day. She tells my brother that she found one of his old shirts. She tells me that she still has the watch I left behind. She asks whether we are together. She asks whether we can hear her. I try to answer. Every night I try. No sound leaves me. The food grows cold. She does not eat much. After a while, she collects the untouched plates and throws the food away. Then the screen disappears. The darkness returns. This happens every night. Always at 6. I do not know what this place is. Maybe it is hell. Maybe it is punishment. Maybe I am being forced to watch the damage I caused. Maybe every dead person remains near the place where their body was buried. Maybe we all lie beneath the earth, unable to move, listening to the lives that continue without us. I have had years to think about the accident. I remember every choice I made that night. The heavy eyelids, the empty coffee cup, the exits I passed, the places where I could have pulled over. I chose to keep driving. I thought I could make it home. I thought nothing would happen. That exhausted ignorance cost me my life. Maybe it also cost my brother his. Maybe it cost my parents their marriage. Now I understand that a death does not end with the person who dies. It travels through everyone who loved them. It changes shape. It becomes drinking, anger, silence, empty beds, ropes, 3 plates on a table meant for one person. I do not know whether my mother can feel me watching. Sometimes, as she sits at the table, she suddenly looks toward the empty chair where my plate waits. For one second, I believe she sees something. Not me exactly. Maybe only a shadow. Maybe only a feeling. She whispers my name. I try to reach her. The darkness holds me in place. Tonight, the screen appeared as always, 6 o'clock. My mother prepared the table. She wore the blue sweater my brother bought her years ago. She placed his plate down first, then mine. Her hands shook more than usual. She sat in her chair and stared at the food. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she looked directly toward where I was watching from. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," she said. Fear moved through me. I screamed for her not to speak that way. She could not hear. She reached across the table and touched my empty plate. "I hope you boys are together," she whispered. "We are not," I tried to tell her. "My brother is somewhere else. Maybe in another darkness. Maybe watching the same table from another side. Maybe he hears me. Maybe he has been trying to answer too." My mother lowered her head. "I'm so tired," she said. The words reminded me of the night I died. I had been tired too. I had believed I could keep going. I wanted to tell her to stop, to call someone, to ask for help, to not make the mistake I made. She remained at the table for nearly an hour. Then she stood and carried the food away. Before the screen disappeared, she paused in the kitchen doorway. She turned toward the empty chairs. "I love you," she said. Then the darkness returned. The whispers are louder tonight. They keep repeating that tomorrow there may only be empty chairs. I refuse to believe them. I do not know whether this is divine punishment. I do not know whether anyone will ever hear these thoughts. I do not know if the dead are allowed to send messages, or if these words will simply remain trapped with me. But if there is any part of me that can still reach the world, I want it to reach her. Mom, none of this was your fault. You loved us. You did everything you could. I am sorry I left you. I am sorry I was too tired and too foolish to stop. I am sorry my death became a weight you had to carry for the rest of your life. I watch you every night. I see every plate. I hear every word. I am still here, even if I cannot answer. Please do not join me in this darkness. Please keep living. I love you, Mom. I love you. I am starving when I sit down for breakfast. It is the kind of hunger that makes every part of my body feel hollow. My stomach twists so tightly that it hurts, and my hands shake when I pull out the chair. Even the weak morning light coming through the kitchen window seems too bright. The house is quiet. For one hopeful second, I think I might be alone. Then I hear my mother's voice. "Isabel, is that you, honey?" Panic rushes through me so quickly that I nearly knock the chair over. Mom appears in the kitchen doorway. Her long blonde hair hangs loosely around her narrow face, and she is wearing her usual heart-shaped apron over a pale dress. White powder covers her hands. It looks like flour. She smiles at me. "Sweetie, you forgot to clean the dishes last night," she says. "I had to do them this morning." My stomach drops. "Sorry, Mom," I lower my head before she can read my face. The hunger suddenly becomes sharper. Did this mean what I thought it meant? Cold fear crawls up my spine. The last time one of us failed to complete an assigned chore, all three of us were punished. It had not mattered who was responsible. Mom and Dad believed that siblings should look after one another. If one person failed, everyone failed. We went without dinner for 3 nights. I can still remember every hour of those days. Mom and Dad ate downstairs while Luke, Lula, and I remained locked in our bedrooms. The smell of cooked meat traveled through the vents and slipped beneath our doors. On the first night, I tried reading to distract myself. On the second, I watched videos of people eating. I stared at plates filled with warm food until saliva gathered in my mouth. I swallowed again and again, but it did nothing to calm the pain. By the third night, I could barely think. My stomach felt as though it were folding in on itself. I lay curled beneath my blanket, crying quietly so Mom would not hear. I imagined walking downstairs, breaking into the kitchen, and eating whatever I could find. But the doors were locked. Mom had removed everything from our rooms that might help us escape. Luke tried to joke through the first day. He always did that when he was scared. By the end of the third night, he had stopped speaking. Lula became so weak that she struggled to stand when Mom finally opened our doors. Even now, I sometimes wake with that same empty feeling inside me. The memory never completely leaves. I choose my next words carefully. I had extra homework last night, so I switched chores with, "I don't care, Isabel. Her voice is still sweet." That makes it worse. Something cold slides down my back, like the thin leg of a spider tracing my spine. The kitchen already smells strongly of breakfast, but there is something wrong beneath the sweetness. The air feels thick. Every breath makes my mouth water and my stomach turn at the same time. Mom turns back toward the stove. "The rota exists for a reason," she continues. "If you have a problem with your cleaning duties, you should come to me. You do not simply ignore them." "Yes, Mom, communication is important in a family." "Right," she glances over her shoulder. Her smile remains in place. "Right what?" I swallow. "Right, Mom. That's better." Footsteps drag along the hallway. A moment later, Luke enters the kitchen with an exaggerated yawn. He drops into the chair across from me and stretches his arms above his head as though he has just woken from the best sleep of his life. He smells terrible. There is sweat beneath the strong scent of my raspberry shampoo. He must have used half the bottle trying to cover it. I narrow my eyes at him. He notices and gives me a lazy smile. "What?" I keep my head down and silently motion for him to do the same. Luke's expression changes. He senses the danger, though not quickly enough. Ever since we were children, my brother and I have shared a strange connection. We do not read each other's thoughts exactly, but I can often feel when he is frightened, angry, or preparing to do something stupid. Most of the time, he can read me just as easily. The punishments only made that connection stronger. When Mom and Dad began locking us away and withholding food, we learned to protect one another. We created signals. A tap on the table meant be quiet. A kick beneath it meant danger. 2 knocks on a bedroom wall meant Mom was coming. I stare at the tabletop and speak carefully. "We're very sorry, Mom. I expect Luke to understand." Instead, he ruins everything. "What are we sorry for?" he asks loudly. I kick him beneath the table, hard. Ow. He kicks me back. Then he leans forward and glares at me. "What was that for, gremlin?" I kick him again. His face tightens, but this time he does not fight back. For a second, the careless expression leaves him. The memory of those 3 hungry days passes between us. Luke never talks about that punishment. He never admits that it changed him. He has always been the hopeful one. When Lula cried, Luke made jokes. When I became angry, he found ways to make me laugh. Even when Mom and Dad locked us in our rooms, he would tap silly songs against the wall to let us know he was still there. But after 3 full days without food, something inside him changed. He continued smiling. He continued making jokes. He continued pretending he was fine. But sometimes I caught him staring into nothing, his eyes wet and his fists closed tightly at his sides. In those moments, He looked like a puppet whose strings had been pulled too hard. I kept waiting for the strings to snap. I imagined him screaming at Mom, attacking Dad, breaking down completely. He never did. He always found a way to force the smile back onto his face. When I finally risked looking at him, he is not watching me. His eyes are fixed on our mother. They are empty. "Good morning, Lucas," Mom sings from the stove. "Did you sleep well?" Luke remains silent for a little too long. His upper lip curls slightly. Then he forces a smile. "Yeah." Mom turns toward him. He makes the smile wider. "I slept great, Mom," he glances at me. I copy his expression immediately. Mom likes us to smile, even when we are frightened, especially when we are frightened. "Good," she says. "A positive attitude makes all the difference." Another set of footsteps approaches. Morning. Our younger sister Lula shuffles into the kitchen. Her blonde curls are tangled around her face, and her eyes are half closed. She gives us a sleepy smile. Then she notices Luke's expression. Her own smile disappears. Lula slowly takes the chair beside me and pushes the hair away from her eyes. "What did you two do?" she whispers. She kicks Luke under the table. He winces, but does not kick her back. "Luke didn't wash the dishes," I mumble. Lula's eyes widen. "What?" "It wasn't my fault," Luke says. "I went out with Dad." He points at me. It was Gremlin's turn. She's the one who left them. I drive my knee into his leg. He groans and grabs the edge of the table. "We had a deal," I hiss. "I cleaned your room, and you promised to do the dishes. And? And you didn't do them. You should have checked. You said you would do it." "I forgot." "You always forget when it's not your punishment." Luke leans closer. "I was helping Dad." "Doing what?" His expression flickers. For the first time, I notice the dark mark near the collar of his shirt. It looks almost brown in the morning light. Before I can ask about it, Mom's voice cuts through the room. Breakfast is ready. All three of us become silent. Mom carries several bowls and plates from the kitchen counter. At first, the amount of food looks wonderful. Bowls of cereal, stacks of pancakes, crepes folded into neat triangles, pastries covered in sugar, fresh fruit, toast, glasses filled with orange juice. My stomach tightens with need. Then the smell reaches me properly. Sweetness covers something sour and rotten. The scent crawls into my nose and coats the back of my throat. Wrong. Everything about it is wrong. Mom places a large plate in front of Luke and begins stacking crepes on it. His face loses all color. She fills Lula's bowl with cereal. Then she turns toward me and pours chocolate cereal into my bowl until it rises above the edge and spills onto the table. I look at the food. My hands start trembling. "Eat up," Mom says. Her voice is bright and cheerful. None of us move. Mom stands behind Luke and rests one hand on his shoulder. "You must be hungry." Luke looks down at the crepes. His eyes squeeze shut. Slowly, he picks up his fork, cuts away a small piece, and places it into his mouth. He chews once. Then he covers his lips and gags. Mom laughs softly and pats his back. "Don't be dramatic." Lula grabs her spoon and pushes cereal into her mouth. Her face tightens. She forces herself to chew. "It's great, Mom," she says too loudly. "Thank you. I know my sister. I can see the effort it takes for her not to spit it out." Mom looks pleased. That's the right attitude. I stare at my bowl. The cereal pieces float in pale milk. They slowly turn soft around the edges, forming a brown layer across the surface. The smell rising from it makes my stomach pull inward. I am starving, yet every part of my body is warning me not to eat. I lift my spoon. My hand shakes badly enough to make the milk ripple. Before taking a bite, I glance at Mom. "What about you?" She tilts her head. Your breakfast." Mom smiles. Oh, don't worry, sweetie, I have something special. She walks toward the refrigerator. Luke stops chewing. Lula's spoon freezes halfway to her mouth. Mom opens the door. The smell enters the kitchen before she removes the plate. Fresh, warm, rich, my mouth fills with saliva. The hunger inside me wakes completely. Mom turns around carrying a silver tray. A woman's severed head rests in the center of it. Her skin is pale. Long, dark hair hangs over the edge of the plate. The neck has been cut roughly, leaving torn flesh and pale pieces of bone exposed. Part of her spine remains attached. Wet organs trail behind the head like thick ropes. The smell fills the room. My stomach growls so loudly that Lula looks at me. I grip the spoon more tightly. Mom places the tray on the counter. The woman's eyes are still open. They are clouded now, staring without seeing. A deep cut runs across one cheek. Luke flinches. His head snaps toward the plate. His pupils widen. His lips pull back from his teeth. For 1 second, his real fangs appear. Sharp, long, still stained near the tips. His hands grip the table. The muscles in his arms tighten. The dead woman is his. I understand the stain on his shirt now. I understand why he was out with Dad. I understand the smell beneath my shampoo. Mom reaches down and grips the woman's hair. She lifts the head from the plate. Luke's chair scrapes across the floor. You have got to be kidding me, he snarls. Mom pauses. Luke is breathing heavily now. She's mine. The cheerful look leaves Mom's face. Excuse me? I caught her. His voice cracks. I did everything Dad said. I waited. I followed her. I didn't make a mess outside. Mom raises one eyebrow. Luke points toward the head. She's mine. The hunger in his voice frightens me. Mom brings the top of the skull toward her mouth. The bone has already been broken open. She bites into the exposed opening. A wet cracking sound fills the kitchen. Luke's eyes close. Mom pulls away with a mouthful of soft tissue. Stringy pieces of brain remain caught between her teeth. Blood runs down her chin and touches the edge of her heart-shaped apron. She chews slowly. Eat your breakfast, please, she says. Luke's expression collapses. He sits down. For a few seconds, he stares at his plate as if he might throw it across the room. Then, he lowers his head and attacks the crepes. He tears pieces away with his fork and forces them into his mouth. Tears run down his cheeks while he chews. Lula continues eating her cereal. She gags quietly after every few bites, hiding it behind her hand. I finally place the first spoonful into my mouth. The cereal is too sweet. The milk tastes sour. My body rejects it immediately. Pain twists through my stomach. I force myself to swallow. Mom watches us while chewing the dead woman's brain. Her smile slowly returns. That's better. I take another bite. The human food sits heavily inside me. We can eat it. It does not kill us. That would be too merciful. It simply tastes wrong. Every flavor is weak and rotten. Bread feels like wet cloth. Milk tastes spoiled even when it is fresh. Fruit burns our tongues. Sugar leaves a bitter layer across our teeth. Mom and Dad tell us that eating normal food builds discipline. They say we must learn to control ourselves. They say we cannot spend our lives behaving like animals. But this is not a lesson. It is punishment. Luke finishes one crepe and starts another. His shoulders shake. Slow down, Mom tells him. You'll make yourself sick. He glares at her through wet eyes. Mom takes another bite from the head. The woman's jaw hangs loosely as Mom turns it in her hands. Lula lowers her spoon. Mom, I'm full. Mom's smile disappears. You've barely eaten. My stomach hurts. You know the rule. Lula looks down. No one leaves the table until the plate or bowl is empty. She lifts the spoon again. I try not to look at the tray, but the smell keeps pulling my attention toward it. I can hear Mom chewing. I can hear small pieces of bone breaking between her teeth. The hunger becomes almost unbearable. My own teeth begin aching. I keep my lips closed so she will not see them change. Dad is not at the table. That is unusual. Normally, he watches punishments. He enjoys reminding us why we deserve them. I wonder whether he is still sleeping or cleaning up whatever happened last night. Luke suddenly speaks. Dad said I could have her. Mom continues chewing. Your father says many things. He promised. You failed to complete your chores. That wasn't my chore. Mom places the head back on the tray. You made an agreement with your sister. That made the dishes your responsibility. Luke turns toward me. Anger flashes across his face. I feel guilty, even though he is the one who forgot. I cleaned my room, he says. I cleaned everything. You did not clean the dishes. I was hunting. You were learning. I killed her. The kitchen becomes silent. Mom wipes the blood from her chin with the back of her hand. You assisted your father. Luke's fangs appear again. I brought her down. Mom steps closer. Her eyes darken. You were told to wait. Luke lowers his gaze. I did. No, you attacked before your father gave permission. She saw us. And whose fault was that? Luke does not answer. Mom leans toward him. You were careless. Your father had to finish the kill. Then you came home and ignored your responsibilities. Luke's fingers curl against the table. She was already dying. That is not the point. Mom's voice remains calm. You need control, Lucas. He looks at the dead woman. You always say that. And you continue proving that I am right. For a moment, I think he is going to attack her. His body leans forward. His jaw tightens. The air around him seems to change. Lula's hand finds mine beneath the table. She grips my fingers. Then Luke looks at us. Something inside him weakens. He lowers his head and takes another bite of his breakfast. Mom smiles again. Good boy. The words hurt him more than a slap would have. He chews while tears continue falling. I keep eating too. The bowl seems endless. Every time I push some cereal aside, more appears beneath it. The milk turns warm. My stomach cramps. Across from me, Luke's face has become pale and wet with sweat. Lula's hands are shaking so badly that cereal falls from her spoon. Mom returns to her own meal. She pushes her fingers into the broken skull and pulls out another piece. The woman's head turns slightly on the tray. For one terrible moment, I think the eyes move. Then I hear a faint sound, a weak breath. I freeze. The woman's lips part. No one else reacts. Maybe I imagined it. Mom bites into her cheek and tears away a strip of skin. The woman's eyelid twitches. She is not completely dead. The truth should frighten me. Instead, the smell of fresh blood makes my mouth water again. I look down at the cereal. Shame burns through me. We are not like the people Luke and Dad hunt. We are not human. Mom and Dad have told us that since we were old enough to understand words. Humans are food. Humans are dangerous. Humans would destroy us if they knew what lived beside them. That is why we smile at school. That is why we hide our teeth. That is why we eat human food in public, even though every bite feels like swallowing rot. But inside our home, we are supposed to be safe. Inside our home, we should not have to pretend. Mom removes one of the woman's eyes and places it on her tongue. Luke makes a broken sound, a growl mixed with a sob. Mom swallows. Then she turns to us. Do you understand why this is happening? None of us answer. Her eyes move from Luke to Lula and finally to me. Isabel? I force another spoonful down. Because we didn't complete the rota. That is part of it. She folds her hands. This family only survives if everyone does their part. We keep the house clean. We follow the rules. We never attract attention. Luke stares at his plate. Mom continues. We do not leave blood on clothing. We do not bring human smells into the house. We do not make agreements and then ignore them. Her gaze settles on Luke. And we do not hunt alone before we are ready. I wasn't alone. You disobeyed. Dad's voice suddenly comes from the hallway. Luke becomes completely still. Dad steps into the kitchen. He has changed clothes, but a dark red line remains beneath one fingernail. He looks tired. His eyes move toward the dead woman's head, then toward Luke. You gave that to Mom? Luke asks. Dad sits at the end of the table. You lost the right to it. I killed her. You nearly let her escape. She didn't escape, because I stopped her. Luke's chair moves backward. You said she was mine. Dad looks at him calmly. I said she would be yours if you followed instructions. Luke's face twists. I did everything. You attacked too early. She saw me. She saw you because you stepped into the light. Luke opens his mouth. Dad raises one hand. The argument ends immediately. Even Mom becomes quiet when he does that. Dad looks at the three of us. Finish your breakfast. He turns toward the tray and pulls one of the woman's ears free. Luke begins crying openly now. He does not hide it. Mom and Dad eat his kill together while he forces himself through another crepe. Lula leans close to me. I can't finish, she whispers. You have to. I'm going to be sick. Don't. If she throws up, Mom will refill the bowl. That happened once before. Lula understands. She covers her mouth until the feeling passes. I look at my own breakfast. There is still too much left. I take another bite, then another. The kitchen is filled with two different kinds of eating. The slow, wet tearing from Mom and Dad, the forced chewing from the three of us. A few minutes later, Luke places his fork down. His plate is empty. He looks worse than he did after the 3-day punishment. Dad examines the plate. Good, Luke does not respond. Thank your mother for breakfast. My brother's jaw tightens. Thank you, Mom. You're welcome, darling. Lula finishes next. She smiles weakly. It was delicious. Mom looks pleased. I swallow the last mouthful of cereal. My stomach feels swollen and sick. I set down the spoon. Mom checks my bowl. Very good. For a moment, relief passes through me. Then she looks toward the sink. A stack of dirty dishes waits beside it. Plates, bowls, glasses, the silver tray, the remains of the woman's head. Mom turns back toward us. Now about last night's cleaning. Luke closes his eyes. Mom's smile widens. You three will wash everything together. Dad stands and takes what remains of the head from the tray. He carries it toward the basement door. The woman's long hair leaves a wet red line across the floor. None of us move. Mom taps the table with one fingernail. Did you hear me? Yes, Mom, we answer together. She removes her apron and places it over the back of a chair. Blood is soaked through the center of the heart. Remember to clean the dishes properly this time, darlings. Mom and Dad leave the kitchen. The basement door closes behind them. For several seconds, the three of us sit in silence. Then, Luke pushes his plate away. His whole body shakes. I hate them, he whispers. Lula looks toward the hallway. Don't say that. I hate them. Luke, he slams both hands onto the table. The glasses jump. I killed her. His voice breaks. I followed her for 3 hours. I waited behind that building. I was the one who caught her. You stepped into the light, I say quietly. He turns toward me. I expect anger. Instead, he looks destroyed. I was hungry. The words come out like a child's confession. I was so hungry, Izzy, I reach across the table and take his hand. His skin is cold. He looks down at our fingers. They're never going to let us hunt properly. They will. No, they won't. Lula begins gathering the bowls we need to clean before Mom comes back. Luke stares at the basement door. She was still breathing. I think about the woman's moving eyelid. I know. She looked at me when Dad put her in the car. His voice becomes smaller. She knew I was there. I do not know what to say. We carry the dishes toward the sink. Lula turns on the water. Luke begins scraping the remains of the pancakes into the bin. I pick up the silver tray. Warm blood covers the metal. A small piece of brain remains near the edge. My stomach growls. Luke hears it. His head turns. For a moment, neither of us moves. Then, he reaches toward the tray. Footsteps sound above the basement stairs. He pulls his hand back. The door opens. Mom appears. Her apron is back on. Fresh blood covers the heart. She looks at the three of us and smiles. Everything all right? Yes, Mom, I say. Luke keeps his head down. Lula begins washing faster. Mom looks at the tray in my hands. Then she notices the small piece of tissue. She takes it with one finger and places it into her mouth. Wasteful, she says. I tighten my grip on the tray. Mom turns to leave. Before stepping through the door, she looks back at us. Oh, and Lucas? He slowly raises his head. Your father and I have decided that you need more discipline. Luke's face goes blank. What does that mean? No hunting for a month. His mouth opens. And until then, she continues, you will eat exactly what humans eat. The color drains from his face. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Mom, no. Snacks, too. I'm sorry. You should be. Please, Mom's smile never changes. You wanted to behave like a human last night. Now you can eat like one. Luke steps toward her. I said, I'm sorry. Dad appears behind Mom. Luke stops. Mom reaches for the basement door. Finish the dishes. The door closes. Luke stands in the middle of the kitchen. His breathing becomes uneven. Then his legs weaken. He drops to the floor. Lula rushes to him. I kneel beside my brother and place both hands on his shoulders. He does not smile. He does not joke. He stares at the closed basement door with empty eyes. The strings inside him are finally beginning to break. From below us comes the sound of wet cutting. Then the faint scream of the woman Luke brought home. She is still alive. Luke hears it. His fangs slide from his gums. A deep growl builds in his chest. I hold him tighter. Not yet, I whisper. His body trembles beneath my hands. Let go of me. No, she's mine. I know. They're eating her. I know. He turns toward me. There is nothing human left in his face. For 1 second, I think he might bite me. Then Lula takes his other hand. The three of us remain on the kitchen floor, listening. Below us, Mom laughs. Dad tells her to hold the woman still. Luke closes his eyes. His fangs slowly disappear. We need a plan, he whispers. I look at Lula. She looks at me. We have always protected one another. We survived the locked rooms. We survived the hunger. We survived smiling at the table while Mom and Dad ate in front of us. We can survive this too. I help Luke stand. Then we return to the dishes. We wash every plate. We clean every fork. We wipe every drop of blood from the tray. And when Mom returns to inspect our work, the three of us show her our best smiles. Human smiles. Polite smiles. The kind she taught us to wear. She does not notice Luke hiding the basement key inside his sleeve. She only looks at the shining dishes and nods. Much better, she says. See what happens when everyone remembers their manners? We thank her together. Then we wait for night. Sorry to pause for just a moment. If this is your first time here, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the calm so far. If you'd like more nights like this, True stories, gentle rain, no interruptions. Please subscribe to Lacuna Noir. It really helps me keep creating these peaceful experiences for you. And tap the bell so you're here every time a new story arrives in the dark. Now, back to the story. All my life, my parents have been extremely strict. At least, that is how I would describe them. Other people might disagree, but they did not have to live in my house. They did not know what it felt like to ask for something and hear the word no. They did not understand how difficult it was to watch other kids get whatever they wanted while I had to wait for special occasions. My parents only bought me a few new Xbox or PC games each year. Sometimes they gave me basketball shoes or a little money on Halloween, but that was about it. Thankfully, the rest of my family usually bought the things my parents refused to get me. My grandparents understood me. My aunts and uncles understood me. Even some of my cousins gave me gift cards when they heard how strict my parents were. But my own mother and father never seemed to care. When I was 11 years old, all I received was an iPhone 11 and an Xbox Series S. That was it. No gaming chair, no second controller, no expensive headset, not even a new television for my room. If that does not show how harsh my childhood was, I do not know what will. My parents always had rules. I had to keep my room clean. I had to take my dishes to the kitchen after eating. I had to finish my homework before playing games. They even expected me to tell them where I was going whenever I left the house. Sometimes they asked me to help carry groceries inside. Once, Dad made me take the trash out, even though I had already logged into an online game with my friends. I missed the first 3 minutes of the match because of him. No one at school understood what I was going through. Whenever I tried explaining it, they laughed or told me their parents were worse. I knew they were only trying to make me feel like my problems did not matter. The worst thing happened when I was 15. It started on a Friday afternoon. I came home from school, threw my backpack onto the living room floor, and went straight upstairs to turn on my PC. I had been playing for about an hour when Mom called me downstairs. She and Dad were standing near the front door. Both of them were dressed nicely. Mom wore a dark blue dress, and Dad had put on one of the shirts he normally saved for work meetings. "We're going out for dinner," Mom said. I looked between them. "What about me?" "There's food in the refrigerator." "What food?" "The lobster thermidor from last night." I stared at her. "You expect me to eat leftovers?" "It was expensive, Conrad, but it's from yesterday." Dad picked up his car keys. "It has been properly refrigerated, heated in the oven." I could not believe what I was hearing. They were going out for a fresh dinner while leaving me with old lobster. It was not even my favorite kind of seafood. "Can't you order me something?" I asked. "No," Dad replied. "Can I come with you?" "It's an adult dinner." "I'm 15. "Exactly." Mom opened the door. "We should be home in a couple of hours. Do your homework, and don't stay up too late." Then they left. I stood in the hallway, listening to their car pull out of the driveway. The house became silent. I went to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. The leftover lobster sat in a glass container on the middle shelf. I stared at it. The sauce had become thick and pale. A layer of oil covered the top. I knew it was probably still good, but that was not the point. My parents had chosen to leave me behind. They expected me to sit alone and eat leftovers while they enjoyed a restaurant meal. I decided I was not going to give them the satisfaction. I took the container from the refrigerator and threw the whole thing into the trash. Then, I made a peanut butter sandwich. It was not a good sandwich. The bread was a little dry, and I spread far too much peanut butter on one side. It stuck to the roof of my mouth while I ate. Still, every bite felt like a victory. I had refused their lobster. I had taken control of my own dinner. After eating, I went upstairs and played on my Xbox. At first, Everything was fine. I expected my parents to return after an hour or two. 2 hours passed. They did not come back. I checked the time on my phone. Then I looked out of my bedroom window. The driveway was empty. I tried calling Mom, but she did not answer. I called Dad. His phone rang several times before going to voicemail. I started becoming angry. They had abandoned me for hours without answering their phones. What if something happened? What if I needed help? What if the internet stopped working? I considered calling the police. Child neglect was serious. I had seen videos about it online. Parents were supposed to care for their children, not leave them alone while they went out and enjoyed themselves. I imagined explaining everything to an officer. My parents had left me with only leftover lobster thermidor. They had been gone almost 3 hours. They had not even ordered me a pizza. Surely someone would understand how bad that sounded. I decided to wait a little longer. I tried distracting myself with my Xbox, but I became bored. I moved to my PC and played another game. That became boring too. Then I tried my Nintendo Switch. Nothing felt enjoyable. I turned on the television and scrolled through streaming services for almost 20 minutes without choosing anything. I considered going outside, but the weather was terrible. The ground was wet from rain, and the temperature had fallen to around 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Far too cold to enjoy being outdoors. Another hour passed. By then, my parents had been gone for almost 4 hours. I had reached my limit. I grabbed my phone and began searching for the number for Child Protective Services. I was serious. I would rather live in an orphanage than continue being treated that way. At least an orphanage might serve fresh meals and let me play games without asking me to take out the trash. Maybe I would visit my parents when I became older. Maybe I would forgive them eventually. But they clearly did not know how to care for a child. Just as I was about to make the call, I heard the front door opening downstairs. My parents had finally returned. I ran into the hallway and looked over the railing. Mom entered first, followed by Dad. They were laughing quietly about something. That made me even angrier. They had ignored my calls, stayed out for hours, and returned home laughing as though they had done nothing wrong. "Where were you?" I demanded. Mom looked up. "At dinner, like we told you. For 4 hours? The restaurant was busy. You didn't answer your phones. My phone was in my purse." Dad closed the door behind him. "Why are you shouting?" I felt something inside me explode. Instead of answering, I raised both hands and gave Mom and Dad the middle finger. Then I turned and began storming toward my bedroom. I had only taken a few steps when Dad grabbed my arm. I spun around. "What are you doing?" His expression was different from normal. Dad was often serious, but I had never seen his face so cold. "You do not speak to us that way," he said. "Let go of me. You do not make that gesture toward your mother. She left me alone. You are 15 years old. You neglected me." Dad pulled me closer. Then he spanked me. I could not believe it. I was 15, not 5. My own father had placed his hand on me as if we were living in some ancient time when parents could punish children. I stared at him in shock. "Go to your room," he ordered. "Should I call child services? Go upstairs. What is wrong with you?" Dad pointed toward the stairs. "You will stay in your room for the rest of the night." Mom stood behind him. She did not defend me. She only looked tired. I wanted to argue, but something in Dad's expression stopped me. For 1 second, he did not look like my father. His face was the same, but the way he held his body seemed wrong. His shoulders were too straight. His eyes did not blink. I told myself I was imagining it because I was upset. I went upstairs and slammed my bedroom door. Then I locked it. I cried that night. I cried more than I had cried in years. What Dad did was not a normal punishment. It was too extreme, too violent. I lay on my bed, replaying the moment over and over. The grip on my arm, the empty look in his eyes, the sound of his voice. Something felt different. Mom and Dad had always been strict, but they had never acted like that before. I wondered whether something had happened at dinner. Maybe they had been drinking. Maybe they had argued. Maybe someone had upset them. But even if they were angry, it did not explain Dad's face. I eventually fell asleep sometime after midnight. My pillow was wet from tears. When I woke the next morning, sunlight was coming through the curtains. For a few moments, I forgot what had happened. Then I moved and felt the memory return. I left my room carefully and walked downstairs. Everything seemed normal. Dad sat at the dining table, reading something on his tablet. Mom stood near the stove, making breakfast. The kitchen smelled like bacon and pancakes. "Good morning, Conrad," Mom said. Her voice was cheerful, too cheerful. She placed a plate in front of me. It had 4 pancakes, several strips of bacon, and strawberries on the side. I sat down slowly. Morning, Mom returned to the stove. Dad did not look at me. I decided to test them. I lowered my head and made my face look as sad as possible. I sighed loudly and pushed one of the pancakes around with my fork. Normally, Mom would ask what was wrong. That morning, she ignored me. I sighed again. Louder, Dad turned a page on his tablet. Neither of them reacted. I placed the fork down. "I'm clearly upset," I said. Mom looked over her shoulder. "Conrad, you have done this before. Drop the act." My mouth fell open. She turned back to the stove. Dad continued reading. That confirmed it. Something was wrong. They were stricter than usual, colder, almost as though the parents who had left for dinner were not the same people who came home. I ran upstairs and closed myself in my room. I opened NBA 2K23 on my PC and tried to play, but I could not concentrate. Every few seconds I thought about Dad's eyes, the way Mom had spoken to me. Their missing 4 hours. The unanswered phones. I began wondering whether they were really my parents. The idea sounded ridiculous, but once it entered my mind, I could not remove it. What if something had happened to them at the restaurant? What if the people downstairs only looked like them? Maybe they had been replaced. I had watched movies and videos about creatures that copied human beings. Aliens, monsters, government experiments, clones. Most people believed those stories were fiction. But most people had not seen the way Dad looked at me the previous night. I needed proof. That afternoon, I created a plan. I had several small cameras I had bought online. I originally planned to use them for recording gaming videos and pranks, but they were perfect for watching the house. I placed one in the living room behind a picture frame. Another went in the kitchen on top of a cabinet. I hid one in the basement between 2 storage boxes. I placed another in the bathroom behind a row of towels. The most important camera went into my parents' bedroom. I waited until they were downstairs, then entered their room and hid the camera on a shelf facing the bed. I knew people might say recording my parents in their bedroom was wrong, but I believed my life might be in danger. Normal rules did not matter anymore. I connected every camera to my computer. For the rest of the day, I remained in my room and watched. At first, nothing unusual happened. Mom cleaned the kitchen. Dad worked on his laptop. They spoke about bills, groceries, and plans for the following week. Mom went to the bathroom. Dad entered the basement and moved a few boxes. They behaved exactly like my parents. That made me question myself. Maybe Dad had only lost his temper. Maybe Mom was tired of my behavior. Maybe I was turning a normal family argument into something much larger. I watched them eat lunch. They talked about me. "He needs more responsibility," Dad said. He's 15, Mom replied. He'll grow out of it. He threw away perfectly good food. He was angry. He nearly called the police. I leaned closer to the screen. How did they know that? I had not told them. Maybe they checked my phone. Or maybe they had been watching me somehow. The idea made me uncomfortable. Still, nothing clearly proved they had been replaced. The afternoon passed. Then evening. My parents watched television together. Mom rested her head on Dad's shoulder. Dad placed one arm around her. They looked normal. For a moment, I began losing hope. Perhaps my parents had simply changed. Perhaps they had decided to become even stricter, and there was nothing I could do about it. That possibility almost felt worse than monsters. At least monsters could be exposed. Strict parents could continue making rules forever. Around 11 that night, Mom and Dad went upstairs. I turned off the lights in my room and watched the bedroom camera. They entered normally. Mom removed her earrings and placed them on the dresser. Dad changed into his sleep clothes. They spoke quietly, but the camera microphone could not pick up every word. Then Dad looked directly toward the shelf where I had hidden the camera. My heart stopped. For a second, I thought he could see it. He stared at the exact spot. Then he smiled. Not a normal smile. It spread across his face slowly. Mom turned and looked toward the camera too. She smiled the same way. I moved closer to the computer. They knew. I was certain they knew I was watching. But neither of them approached the camera. Instead, they sat on the edge of the bed. They began communicating in low sounds. It was not normal speech. Their mouths moved, but the noises were wet and broken. Clicking sounds came from their throats. Sometimes Mom tilted her head sharply, and Dad answered with a deep, vibrating sound. I turned up the volume. The sounds became clearer. They did not belong to human voices. My hands began shaking. I knew it. I whispered. Those people were not my parents. Dad reached toward his face. His fingers pressed into the skin near his jaw. Then he pulled. The skin stretched. Mom did the same thing near her neck. Something dark moved beneath her skin. They turned toward each other. Then both of them quickly climbed under the blankets. The covers began shaking. At first, the movement was small. Then the entire bed started jumping. Strange noises filled the room. Wet tearing, hard clicking, low moans. Something struck the headboard repeatedly. A shape rose beneath the covers, much taller than either of my parents. Another shape twisted beside it. The blanket stretched upward. For 1 second, I saw what looked like a long arm pressing from beneath the fabric. It had too many joints. I pushed away from the desk. My chair fell backward. I had been right. Those things were not Mom and Dad. They had done something to my real parents. Maybe my parents were still alive somewhere. Maybe the creatures were eating them. Maybe they planned to replace me next. I needed to act before it was too late. I opened my closet and grabbed the baseball bat I kept behind my clothes. My hands were sweaty around the handle. I left my bedroom and entered the hallway. The strange noises were loud enough to hear without the camera now. The walls seemed to vibrate with every movement from the bedroom. I walked slowly toward the door. My heart pounded so hard that I thought the creatures would hear it. The bedroom door was slightly open. I placed one hand against it. The sounds stopped. I froze. For several seconds, there was complete silence. Then, a soft clicking noise came from inside. I pushed the door open. The room was dark except for the light of the moon coming through the window. The blankets moved on the bed. Something beneath them released a low growl. I raised the bat. "Where are my parents?" I demanded. The shapes became still. No one answered. I stepped closer. The smell in the room was strange, warm, sweaty, and almost sweet. I could hear heavy breathing beneath the covers. I tightened my grip on the bat. Whatever was under there knew I had entered. I moved to the side of the bed. The blanket was wrapped around the two moving shapes. One of them made a high sound. The other answered with something deep and rough. I lifted the bat over my shoulder. Then, with my free hand, I grabbed the end of the cover. I counted silently. 1, 2, 3. I pulled the blanket away. What I saw underneath will shock you. Get this post to 10 upvotes to see what happened next. My daughter and I have always been as close as two people could be. Her name is Kayla, and from the time she was a baby, it was always the two of us against the world. Her mother died when Kayla was still too young to remember her. She had only been a few months old when it happened. We knew it was coming. The doctors had warned us. They explained the illness, the treatment, and the chances. They tried to prepare us for the end. Friends and family came to visit. People brought food, flowers, and all the usual things people bring when they do not know what else to do. We had time to say goodbye. At least, that was what everyone told me. But knowing that someone is going to die does not make the moment easier when it finally happens. When my wife passed away, the full weight of her absence settled on me like something heavy pressing against my chest. For months, I woke every morning and forgot for a few seconds that she was gone. I would turn toward her side of the bed, expecting to see her there. Then I would remember. Those few seconds were always the worst. The house felt too large without her. Every room held some reminder that she had once lived there. Her shoes remained near the front door. Her coat hung in the closet. Bottles of perfume sat on the dresser. I could smell her in places where she had not been for weeks. Sometimes I stood in the bedroom and stared at her side of the closet until I lost track of time. Other times, I sat on the couch holding one of her old sweaters because it still carried a little of her smell. I did not know how to keep living without her. Kayla gave me a reason. She was too young to understand death, grief, or the way her mother's absence had changed everything. She only knew when she was hungry, tired, uncomfortable, or afraid. That gave me missions. If she woke up crying in the middle of the night, my job was to lift her from the crib and calm her. If she needed feeding, my job was to prepare the bottle. If she made a mess, I cleaned it. If she was sick, I stayed beside her. Every small need became a task that pulled me back into the world. There was always something to do. Warm the milk, change the diaper, wash the clothes, sing until she fell asleep. Those simple duties saved me. They did not remove the grief, but they gave me a reason to put it down for a few minutes at a time. I was grateful that I still felt the pain. That may sound strange, but feeling nothing would have seemed like betrayal. I loved my wife. Losing her was supposed to hurt, so I allowed myself to feel it. I looked through old pictures. I lit the candles she liked. I opened her perfume bottles just to catch the smell. Sometimes I held Kayla and saw her mother in the shape of her eyes or the way she moved her hands. As Kayla grew, something new began forming inside me. It was a mixture of grief for my wife and love for my daughter. The two feelings became tied together so tightly that I could not separate them. Watching Kayla grow felt like watching part of my wife continue. When she smiled, I saw her mother. When she became stubborn, I saw her mother. When she laughed so hard that she could not breathe, I heard the same sound that used to fill our kitchen. I began feeling as though my wife was still with us. Not in a frightening way. It was more like a quiet presence. I imagined her watching from somewhere nearby, while I learned how to be both parents at once. I never felt completely alone. I felt as though we were still raising Kayla together, and that my wife was trusting me to do my part. That feeling shaped the way I raised our daughter. I wanted to make good choices because it felt like her mother was always watching. I did not want to disappoint her. One of the biggest lessons I tried to teach Kayla was the importance of manners. My wife and I had agreed on that long before we had a child. We both believed that simple kindness and respect mattered. Please, thank you. Excuse me. Helping clean up. Waiting your turn. Being polite at the table. Those things may seem small, but they tell you a great deal about a person. By the time Kayla reached her toddler years, she already wanted to help with dinner. She would carry napkins to the table and place them beside the plates. Sometimes they were folded. Sometimes they were crumpled into little balls. She would bring spoons one at a time, holding them carefully in both hands. She loved setting the table. It made her feel grown up. Sometimes she tried pouring our drinks by herself. She was too small to control the heavy juice container, so most of it ended up spilling across the table. Whenever that happened, she froze. Her face turned bright red, and her eyes filled with tears because she thought she had done something terrible. I never became angry. I would kneel beside her and tell her it was all right. Then we cleaned the table together. I always told her how proud I was that she had tried to help. She never asked why it was only the two of us. At least, she did not ask directly. She saw pictures of her mother around the house. I talked about her often. I wanted Kayla to grow up knowing that her mother had loved her, even if she could not remember her. I think Kayla understood that someone was missing. She just did not understand what missing meant. The first time she placed an extra plate on the table, I thought it was sweet. She had been setting out our dishes while I finished cooking. When I carried the food into the dining room, I noticed 3 plates instead of 2. There were 3 forks, 3 cups. 1 chair was empty. "What's this one for?" I asked. Kayla looked at me as though the answer was obvious. "For Mommy." I stopped moving. She climbed into her chair. "I want Mommy to eat too." For a second, I did not know what to say. Kayla was only 3 years old. She knew she had a mother because I had told her. She had seen the photographs. She had heard me talk about her. Maybe she thought her mother lived somewhere else. Maybe she believed Mommy was a person who visited when Kayla was asleep. I did not want to turn a harmless act into something painful. So I left the plate. Kayla smiled and began eating. After that, the extra place became normal. She always set out a glass and plate for her mother. "Pour Mommy some juice," she would say. Sometimes she pushed vegetables away from the empty place. "Mommy doesn't like peas." I would ask how she knew. Kayla would shrug. She told me. I assumed it was a child's imagination. Children invented invisible friends. They spoke to toys. They made up stories. This was probably her way of filling the empty space in our family. I did not see any harm in it. Looking back, I think I should have helped her understand reality sooner. But how do you explain death to a child that young? How do you tell her she is placing silverware in front of someone who will never sit there? Each time I tried to think of the right words, I imagined the confusion on her face. So I avoided the conversation. The extra plate remained. At first, Kayla only set it out. Then she began leaving food on it. She would reach into her own plate, grab a handful of spaghetti, and drop it onto her mother's dish. Sauce covered her fingers and splashed across the tablecloth. "Kayla, don't do that," I said the first time. "It's for Mommy. She doesn't need your dinner." "Yes, she does." I moved the empty plate away. Kayla screamed. She kicked the legs of her chair and cried so loudly that I thought the neighbors might hear. "I want Mommy to eat too." I tried explaining that Mommy was not hungry. That only made her angrier. You don't know. She reached for the plate and pulled it back toward the empty chair. I should have stopped the habit then. Instead, I gave in. She was small and upset, and I did not want dinner to become a fight about her dead mother. I told myself it would pass. Children grow out of strange habits. They forget imaginary friends. They move on. Except Kayla did not. As the years passed, she stopped setting out the extra plate at dinner. For a while, I believed she had finally understood. She no longer mentioned feeding Mommy at the table. She stopped leaving glasses of juice beside the empty chair. I felt relieved. Then I started hearing sounds from the kitchen at night. The first time, I woke to the sound of a cabinet opening. I checked the clock. It was after midnight. I listened for a moment and heard a dish touch the counter. Then the refrigerator door opened. I got out of bed and found Kayla standing in the kitchen, wearing her pajamas. "What are you doing?" She jumped. Nothing. She held a plate behind her back. I thought she had been looking for a midnight snack. "You need to be in bed." I was hungry. I gave her a small piece of toast, walked her back to her room, and tucked her in. It happened again a few nights later. This time, I heard the microwave. By the time I reached the kitchen, she was gone. There was a dirty fork in the sink and a small amount of food missing from the refrigerator. I decided not to make it a big issue. Maybe she was going through a growth stage. Maybe she was waking hungry. I started leaving a small snack for her before bed. The nighttime sounds continued. Cabinets, plates, the refrigerator, sometimes the microwave. Then her room began to smell. At first, it was faint. I noticed it while placing clean clothes in her drawer. Something sour and unpleasant hung in the air. I opened the window and checked the trash can, but it was empty. The smell returned the next day. Within a week, it had become much worse. Entering her room felt like opening a garbage container in the summer. The smell of rot struck me immediately. I checked beneath piles of clothes. I opened every drawer. I looked inside the closet. "Do you smell that?" I asked her. Kayla shook her head. "I don't smell anything. It's terrible. Maybe it's outside." "It's not outside. Maybe it's the bathroom. The bathroom is down the hall." She shrugged and returned to playing. She was older by then, but still young enough to believe that a poor lie might work if she said it calmly. The smell was clearly coming from her room. I needed to find the source. I washed her bedding. I searched behind furniture. I checked the air vents. Nothing. Then one afternoon, I dropped one of her socks while putting away laundry. It rolled beneath the bed. I knelt down and reached for it. My fingers touched the edge of something cold and hard. A plate. I pulled it out. The smell became stronger. There was food on the plate. At least it had once been food. It was covered in dark mold and had begun turning into a wet, rotten mass. I looked under the bed again. There were more plates. I pulled them out one at a time. 6, 8, 12. There must have been at least a dozen dishes beneath her bed. Each one held a pile of rotting food. Pasta, meat, vegetables, pieces of bread. Some had been there so long that I could no longer tell what they originally contained. Flies moved around the oldest plates. My stomach turned. Kayla stood in the doorway watching me. "What is this?" I asked. She looked at the dishes without embarrassment. "They're from Mommy." My confusion became anger, not because of the mess itself, but because I suddenly understood what she had been doing every night. "Have you been taking food from the kitchen and putting it under here?" "Yes. For how long?" She did not answer. "Kayla, she gets hungry." I stood. There was no way I could keep avoiding the truth. Maybe I should have explained it years before. Maybe I had allowed this to happen because I was too afraid of hurting her. But letting her live inside this belief was no longer kind. I sat her on the bed. "Kayla, listen to me." She frowned. Mommy cannot eat this. Yes, she can. No, she can't. She told me she's hungry. A cold feeling moved through my stomach, but I ignored it. Children said strange things. Children invented voices. Your mother is gone, I said. Kayla stared at me. She died when you were a baby. No, yes, she's still here. She is not in this house. You're lying. Tears filled her eyes. I hated myself for making her cry, but I continued. Mommy loved you very much, but she is dead. Dead people do not need food. They do not get hungry. Kayla's face became hard. It was an expression I had never seen on her before. Mommy is going to be mad at you. I made her clean the food from beneath the bed. That was her only punishment. She carried each plate to the kitchen while I opened the windows and cleaned the floor. Then I stood beside her while she washed the dishes. She cried the whole time. I'm just trying to feed her. I know. She's hungry. I understand that you think that. I don't think it. I know. I did not argue further. Kayla pouted for the rest of the day. She barely spoke to me at dinner. When I entered her room that night, she turned her back and pretended to sleep. The following morning, things seemed more normal. Over the next few weeks, she mentioned her mother only a few times. There were no more plates under the bed. I stopped hearing noises from the kitchen at night. I believed the problem had ended. I believed I had finally done what I should have done years before. Then last week, it started again. It was late, almost midnight. I was lying in bed, close to sleep, when I heard a cabinet opening in the kitchen. A plate struck the counter, then another. I sighed. I was exhausted. Part of me wanted to get up immediately and stop her. Another part told me I could handle it in the morning. The refrigerator opened. I heard something being removed. Then the microwave beeped. I rolled onto my side and closed my eyes. I told myself I would speak to her after breakfast. I am not sure when the kitchen became quiet. The next thing I remember was waking to the feeling of the mattress moving. The clock beside the bed said 3:20 in the morning. Kayla stood beside me. She was holding her blanket. Daddy, she whispered. Her voice sounded small. What is it? Can I sleep in your bed tonight? I lifted the blanket. You're always welcome. She climbed in beside me. I wrapped one arm around her and pulled her close. Her body felt cold. I thought she had probably been standing in the hallway for a while. Within seconds, I began falling asleep again. Just before I lost consciousness, Kayla said one more thing. I think Mommy's mad tonight. The words reached me through the fog of sleep. I should have woken fully. I should have asked what she meant. Instead, I made some quiet sound and pulled her closer. Then, I slept. I woke the next morning with sunlight coming through the curtains. Kayla was still beside me, breathing deeply. She looked peaceful. It was Saturday, so I decided to let her sleep. I got out of bed quietly and walked toward the kitchen to make coffee. The house smelled normal. No rot, no strange sounds. As I reached the hallway, I remembered the cabinet's opening during the night. I stopped outside Kayla's room. I felt tired and annoyed. Part of me expected to find another plate of food beneath the bed. I opened the door. The room was empty, of course. Kayla was still asleep in my bed. I crossed the room and knelt beside hers. Before looking underneath, I noticed something on the carpet. A dark stain. It began near the edge of the bed. I touched it. The stain was still wet. My heart began beating faster. I lowered my head and looked underneath. There was one plate. A clean white dinner plate. Something rested on it. At first, I thought it was a piece of steak. Then I noticed the color. The meat was raw. Blood covered the plate and had spilled over the edge onto the carpet. The piece was thick and uneven, as though it had been torn rather than cut. I stared at it, trying to understand what part of an animal it might be. Then I saw the bite mark. A clear section had been torn away from one side. Small teeth had left curved marks in the flesh. For several seconds, I could not move. I heard a floorboard creak behind me. I turned. Kayla stood in the doorway. She was no longer asleep. Her hair hung around her face. She stared at the plate under the bed. Then she looked at me. "Mommy didn't like it," she said. My mouth became dry. "Where did you get this?" Kayla did not answer. I stood slowly. "Kayla, where did this meat come from?" She looked toward the hallway. "She brought it." "Who?" Kayla frowned. "Mommy." I stepped closer. "Your mother is dead. I know." The answer stopped me. Until that moment, I thought she still did not understand. "What do you mean, you know?" Kayla looked at me with complete calm. She says that's why she's hungry. A sound came from beneath the bed. Soft, wet, like someone chewing with their mouth open. I looked down. The plate was empty. Only blood remained. Behind me, Kayla whispered, "She's still mad." Something moved in the darkness beneath the mattress. Then, in a voice I had not heard since the night my wife died, something softly said my name. My mom died suddenly and unexpectedly about 4 months ago. The doctor said it was a hospital infection. She had gone in for something that was serious but treatable. No one believed she was going to die. Even the doctors had told us she should be home within a few days. Then she developed a fever. After that, everything happened too quickly. One day, she was sitting up in bed and complaining about the hospital food. The next, she could barely speak. Machines surrounded her, and nurses kept entering and leaving the room with worried looks on their faces. By the end of the week, she was dead. I still have trouble understanding that sentence. My mom was dead. She was 40, 2 years old. She exercised, ate healthy food, and hardly ever became sick. She had gone into a hospital because it was supposed to be the safest place for her. Instead, she never came home. But if you can believe it, her death was not the worst thing that happened. It was not even the fact that her younger sister, my Aunt Claudia, became involved with my dad less than 2 months after the funeral. That hurt, of course. It felt wrong in a way I could not explain without sounding cruel. Dad said they had found comfort in each other because they were both grieving. Aunt Claudia said my mom would have wanted them to support one another. Maybe that was true. Maybe it was not. All I knew was that 2 months after I watched my mother's coffin disappear into the ground, her sister was sitting in Mom's chair, drinking from Mom's favorite cup, and sleeping beside Dad in the bedroom that had belonged to my parents. Aunt Claudia moved into our house the previous weekend. She brought 3 suitcases, several boxes of clothes, and her own bright decorations. Within 2 days, the house smelled like her perfume instead of Mom's. She tried too hard to be friendly with me. She asked about school. She offered to help with my homework. She bought my favorite snacks and placed them in the kitchen cupboards. She smiled constantly, as though she believed enough kindness could make me forget what she was doing. It did not. The worst thing had not happened yet. It began on a dull evening near the end of autumn. Rain had been falling all day, leaving the sky dark long before night arrived. The windows were covered with small drops, and cold wind pressed against the house. I had just eaten dinner with Dad and Aunt Claudia. She had made chicken with vegetables and spent the whole meal asking about school. "How did your math test go? Did you speak to that girl you mentioned? Are you still thinking about joining the drama club?" Her voice was bright and cheerful. I gave short answers and kept my eyes on my plate. Dad barely noticed. He smiled whenever Claudia spoke and reached across the table once to touch her hand. I felt sick when he did it. Mom had been gone for only 4 months. Her place at the table had not even had time to become cold. As soon as I finished eating, I carried my plate to the kitchen and said I needed to do homework. Aunt Claudia smiled. That's my hard-working girl. I wanted to tell her I was not her girl. Instead, I went upstairs. I closed my bedroom door and sat at my desk. My laptop was open to a school assignment. I was supposed to write several pages about a book we had read in class, but I could not concentrate. I had barely been able to concentrate on anything since Mom died. Words moved across pages without entering my mind. Teachers spoke, but their voices became distant. I sometimes realized I had been staring at the same question for 10 minutes. That evening was no different. I stared at the empty document and tried to force myself to write. Nothing came. After several minutes, I minimized the assignment. My desktop background appeared. It was an old family photograph taken a few years earlier during my grandmother's birthday celebration. Mom and Aunt Claudia sat beside each other on a sofa. They had always looked similar, especially around the eyes, but they were different enough that no one could mistake one for the other. Mom had dark blonde hair and a gentle smile. Aunt Claudia's hair was lighter, and her smile was wider. Dad sat beside Mom. I was leaning against him. All 4 of us were smiling at the camera. Mom had one arm around Dad and the other around Claudia, holding both of them close. The photograph had seemed happy when it was taken. Now it felt like a warning none of us had understood. I stared at Mom's face. I remembered the sound of her laugh. I remembered the way she entered my room without knocking and then became annoyed when I complained. I remembered her telling me to sit up straight, finish my homework, and stop hiding in oversized black clothes. I would have given anything to hear her complain about me again. A small light began flashing in the lower corner of the screen. At first, I ignored it. Then I noticed it was coming from an old chat application. Hardly anyone used that app anymore. I had not opened it in months and had been planning to remove it from the laptop. The chat icon continued blinking. I moved the cursor over it. A small profile picture appeared. I froze. It was Mom. The photo had been taken during a summer holiday. She was wearing sunglasses and smiling toward the camera. Her account had not been active since she died. I stared at the image, unable to breathe properly. Then a message appeared. "Hello, Thelma. It's me, Mom." My hands left the keyboard. For several seconds, I did not move. Fear closed around my throat. I knew it had to be a mistake. Someone had gained access to her account. Maybe it was a cruel joke. Maybe the app was showing an old message because of some technical problem. But I had never seen those words before. "Hello, Thelma. It's me, Mom." I slowly turned toward my bedroom door. It was closed. From downstairs, I could hear the television. Aunt Claudia always left it playing, even when she was not watching. The laughter from some comedy show rose through the floor. I looked back at the screen. Another message appeared. "Don't be scared, Thelma. It's really me. I found a way to talk to you, my darling, precious child. I've missed you so much." If it was a joke, it was the cruelest joke anyone could have played. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. The phrase, "my darling, precious child," was something Mom had said when I was younger. She usually used it when she was teasing me or trying to make me smile after an argument. I covered my mouth with one hand. A third message appeared. "Oh, my darling, please don't cry. It's all right. And there's no use crying anyway. I need you to save that energy." The words frightened me. Mom had always disliked seeing me cry. She believed crying could be useful for a few minutes, but eventually you had to stop and decide what to do next. Save your energy, she used to say. You may need it. My fingers were stiff when I placed them on the keyboard. Mom? What do you mean? Is that really you? I watched the small symbol beside her name. It showed she was typing. For one strange moment, I could almost feel her frustration coming through the screen. It was the same frustration she showed when she believed I was being weak or refusing to understand something obvious. Of course, it's me, Thelma. I've come back because I need to tell you something important. My heart was beating hard enough to hurt. I had something important to tell her, too. Did you know Aunt Claudia moved in last weekend? The answer came quickly. Yes, Thelma, I know. I stared at those words. Then another message arrived. That is what gave me the strength to reach you. You need to be strong now. I know you are a strong girl, and you can handle this. I'm sorry that you have to, but you need to know the truth. I leaned closer to the screen. The messages continued. She cannot have everything. My life, my husband, my house, my child. A different kind of fear moved through me. This was no longer only grief or shock. There was anger in those words. An anger I had never felt from Mom before. What do you mean? The typing symbol appeared again. It remained there for almost a minute. Then the message came. Thelma, I'm sorry to put this on you. I don't know what else to do. You need to know that Aunt Claudia murdered me. The room seemed to move. For a second, I felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath my chair, and I was falling into a deep, dark hole. I read the message again. Aunt Claudia murdered me. The terrible part was that some hidden part of me believed it immediately. Perhaps I had believed it for months. I remembered the night everything changed. Dad and I had been at home when the telephone rang. Aunt Claudia was calling from the hospital where she worked. She asked to speak to Dad privately. A few hours later, he took me to the hospital. Mom was already unconscious. Claudia stood outside the room, crying into Dad's chest. At the time, I thought she was only grieving. After Mom died, Claudia was always present. She helped organize the funeral. She brought food to the house. She stayed late at night to comfort Dad. Sometimes I woke and heard them whispering downstairs. Less than 2 months later, Dad told me they had developed feelings for each other. I had wanted to ask how love could appear so quickly from grief. I never did. The laptop made a soft notification sound. Thelma, are you listening to me? Any remaining doubt disappeared. I heard the sentence in Mom's voice. She had said those exact words hundreds of times. Whenever I stared out a window while she spoke. Whenever she helped me with homework. Whenever she knew I was pretending not to hear her. Thelma, are you listening to me? Yes, Mom, but how? Her answer appeared slowly. She was at the hospital when I went in. She did not work on my floor, but it was easy for her to arrange for me to be exposed to an infection. My hands shook. Aunt Claudia worked in the hospital laboratory. She had access to samples, equipment, and areas ordinary visitors could not enter. I wanted to ask for proof. I wanted to know exactly what she had done. Before I could type another word, my bedroom door opened. Thelma? I screamed. Aunt Claudia poked her head into the room. I quickly clicked on the chat window and minimized it. My desktop photograph returned. Claudia entered, staring at me with concern. Oh, honey, you look like you've seen a ghost. Are you all right? I nodded because I could not trust my voice. She stepped farther into the room and closed the door behind her. The television continued playing downstairs. Aunt Claudia sighed. Thelma, sweetheart, I know you miss your mom. I gripped the edge of my desk. I miss her too, she continued. More than you understand. But sitting in your room and being miserable is not helping anyone. I looked down. It's hurting your dad, you know. My eyes moved toward her. Do you want him to suffer even more? I shrugged. I could not speak. If I opened my mouth, I was afraid I would ask whether she had murdered her own sister. Aunt Claudia stepped closer. The light from the laptop shone across her face. For the first time, I realized how much she looked like Mom. The same shape around the eyes, the same nose, the same small line between the eyebrows. But there was something wrong. She looked like Mom seen through a broken mirror. Familiar pieces arranged in the wrong way. And these clothes, Thelma, she reached toward my sleeve. I was wearing a black jumper, as I had almost every day since the funeral. Her fingers touched the fabric. I pulled away as though she had struck me. Her smile disappeared. For a moment, anger passed across her face. I thought she was going to slap me. Then the smile returned. I know girls your age like wearing black, she said. But you don't need to dress as though you're attending a funeral every day. My throat tightened. Why don't you and I go to the shopping center this weekend? We can choose some nice new clothes for you. My treat. I shook my head. Come on, sweetheart. It will be fun. No. The answer escaped before I could stop it. Aunt Claudia's eyes narrowed. No, I don't want new clothes. I'm only trying to help. I don't need your help. Tears began running down my face. They were tears of grief, fear, and anger mixed together. Aunt Claudia's expression hardened. Oh, Thelma, then she stopped. Her eyes moved away from me. She became completely silent. The color slowly disappeared from her face. I followed her stare toward the laptop. The chat window was still minimized, but the desktop background had changed. The old family photograph was gone. In its place was a new image. Mom lay in a hospital bed. Her eyes were closed, and her skin looked pale. Tubes ran from her arms. A machine stood beside her. Aunt Claudia was in the photograph, too. She was standing beside the bed. Her body was bent over Mom. One hand was near Mom's arm. The picture had been taken from the corner of the hospital room. I had never seen it before. Claudia stared at the screen. Her lips parted. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then she rushed toward the laptop. Where did you get that? I pushed my chair backward. She turned on me. Her face twisted into a terrible expression. Are you playing tricks on me? I didn't do anything. Who sent you that? I don't know. You little liar. She moved toward me. The friendly voice disappeared completely. She no longer looked like the aunt who had offered to buy me clothes. She looked like someone who had been trapped and knew there was no way out. What have you been doing? She demanded. Nothing. Who have you been speaking to? I glanced at the laptop. She saw the movement. Her eyes narrowed. Then she reached for the computer. I grabbed it first and pulled it toward me. Give me that. No. Thelma. Give it to me now. You killed her. The words left my mouth before I had decided to speak. Aunt Claudia froze. The room became silent except for the distant television. What did you say? You killed Mom. Her face changed, not into guilt, into fear. Who told you that? I did not answer. She took another step. Who told you? I looked at Mom's image on the screen. Aunt Claudia followed my gaze. For a moment, she looked almost ready to cry. Then she became furious. She's dead, she whispered. The words were not directed at me. She spoke to the photograph. You're dead. The laptop screen flickered. The image changed slightly. Mom's eyes were now open. They were staring directly at Aunt Claudia. My aunt stumbled backward. No, the chat window opened by itself. A new message appeared. You should not have taken my life. Aunt Claudia shook her head. This is not real. Another message appeared. You should not have taken my family. Claudia looked at me. There was hatred in her eyes. You did this. I didn't. You're trying to destroy everything. You killed her. She was already taking everything from me. The answer came out as a scream. I stopped breathing. Aunt Claudia seemed to realize what she had admitted. Her mouth closed. For a second, she looked shocked by her own words. Then all control disappeared from her face. She had everything, Claudia said. She always had everything. I pressed myself against the desk. The husband, the house, the child. Everyone loved her. You were her sister. I was always her sister. Never Claudia, never myself. Only her younger sister. Tears ran down her face, but her voice remained full of anger. She didn't even understand how lucky she was. You murdered her. It was not supposed to happen so quickly. I felt sick. You gave her the infection. She was supposed to become ill. Dad was supposed to need me. Stop calling him Dad. Claudia's expression twisted again. I have looked after him better than she ever did. She loved him. She took him for granted. The laptop made another notification sound. Claudia turned toward it. A sentence appeared on the screen. He will never love you the way he loved me. Aunt Claudia screamed. She lunged forward. I did not know whether she intended to attack me or destroy the laptop. I pushed my chair away and raised both arms over my face. Her fingers were inches from me when the laptop screen became completely white. A sharp cracking sound filled the room. A bolt of blue-white electricity shot from the computer. It struck Aunt Claudia in the center of her chest. Her whole body lifted from the floor. For one impossible second, she hung in the air with her arms spread wide. The room smelled of burning hair and hot metal. Then she fell. Her back struck the floor. Her head hit the edge of my bed before rolling to one side. The lights in the bedroom went out. The television downstairs stopped. Darkness and silence filled the house. I remained in my chair with my arms still raised. A thin line of smoke rose from Claudia's dress. Her eyes were open. They stared toward the ceiling. She did not breathe. I lowered my hands slowly. Aunt Claudia? She did not move. I stood, but my legs could barely hold me. I took one step toward her. There was a black mark in the center of her chest, directly above her heart. The laptop was still open on the desk. Its screen glowed in the darkness. Mom's profile picture appeared in the chat window. A final message began forming. Do not be scared, my darling. I looked from the screen to Aunt Claudia's body. My entire body began shaking. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. Dad had heard the noise. He called my name from the hallway. Thelma? What happened? I tried to answer. Nothing came out. The bedroom door began opening. The last thing I saw before Dad entered was a new line appearing beneath Mom's message. One down. And then I screamed. Look, if you're still watching, you already know what this channel is. No jump scares, no fake drama, just real stories about real people who survive things most of us can't even imagine. And that's scarier than any movie could ever be. If you want more of this raw, unfiltered truth, told the way it deserves to be told, subscribe to Lacuna Noir. We're not here to waste your time. We're here to tell the stories that actually matter. Thanks for listening. Now go get some sleep, if you can.